what I get for being a noisy, opinionated, Jewish, Zionist woman is like, I mean, you can imagine the Venn diagram. It's like just everyone's biggest hatreds. And that's why it's the thing that is right and is probably the recipe for what we should, it's probably the best utopia would be one of Zionist whores, which is kind of why I wrote my book. Just to piss off, just to check that all the right people would be um angered by it. And so I confess it's been a bit bruising. The Zionism stuff, the Margate reaction and the abuse I get, I don't care. It's just obvious, like, well, we all know what those battle lines are. But Brendan, poke the feminist bear at your own peril. I mean, I have been quite taken aback by the vitriol that I've received from female reviewers of my book who are completely barking up the wrong tree. Like, I was very careful in my book to anticipate their pushback.
Hmm.
And they just weren't interested. And so I think that this is an example of, and I'm writing this book for women because I want women to not go down the toilet. Women are flushing themselves down the toilet right now, and they're doing it partly by their political insanity, which involves, for instance, preferring the ayatollahs or whatever, the Iranian regime to thinking that any reference to Iranian women's freedom is just like George Bush style feminism washing. That's the level at which they're looking at this. The cluelessness, the absurd identification with theocratic sadists who hate women. And we know that women are like the fangirls of Polanski. The all young women want to vote green, and all the young women who voted for Mamdani, and it's chickens voting for KFC or whatever. And it's happening in the discourse around women as well. And it's that which kind of made me want to write this book. It's just like, no, no, no. And this is why when I see women be awesome, especially like when they're fighter pilots in the IDF or winning like little girls from India who are chess champions, like grandmasters or things like that, I feel such pride. It literally makes my year because I remember that I'm right, which is that girls and women are just have can do everything that they may want that is considered to be, a male domain, and it's just rubbish. And so they can absolutely be fighter pilots. Doesn't mean they're as physically strong as men, but there's still a lot of talking ourselves down, and it's now being done through these totally dopey politics. So I think it's all connected.
Yeah, I agree. So this is your book, Good Slut: How Money, Sex, and Power Set Women Free. I mean, it is a brilliant read. It's really saucy. I don't know if you're allowed to use that word anymore these
Yeah,
days, but it's very provocative.
I'm a filthy Lindy.
Yeah, it's a great counterblast against, as you say, talking women down, which comes from both the right and the left these days, from all sections of society. I love the fact that you say that you often get called a Zionist whore, and then you
Mm.
say in the book, "Well, that's a great thing to be. Why not?" Because that does run so counter to some of those things you've just mentioned there. When you think about the fact that we've got young, so-called progressive women marching on the streets with Islamists, and with other women wearing the hijab or the burqa, all of them linked together in this Islamo-left lunatic asylum, calling for the destruction of the Jewish state or calling for victory to the Islamic Republic. I mean, to get into some of the themes of the book, what role do you think that kind of Islamo-left politics plays? Because that's quite current in terms of talking women down or causing some of these problems.
Well, I think the Islamo left is just one of the features of a branch of feminism, which has basically become the branch of feminism, which is that you kind of lead with whatever underdog. No, it's partly underdog narrative, but it's also the obsession with power. And that word power is so central to academia, the post structural, everything becomes about power, which is like you can never pinpoint what power is, but it's just the thing that the people you hate have. Um, Even though you're leveraging your own power through pretend, it's a very, it's a very malign thread that runs through all of the things these Islamo-leftists are learning at university. And it's the third thing you learn now. You latch onto it, like, probably learn it in primary school. I mean, power, power, power. Who has the power? Who and how what can we read from that? And I suppose, like, there's the same people who buy into the post-colonial idea of like the settler colonialist who's grabbed the power, the white people with their power, the white privilege, the unjust, basically the unjust, cruel, racist seizure of power is probably and then its usage through capitalism and what have you to pollute the planet and make life even worse for the powerless, who are the poor third world, or sorry, whatever it's called now, developing world, global south, excuse me, people. And so what the people I'm kind of arguing against on the left in this book are those who deploy that sort of thinking for just every woman's state of being. So we must so with them it's always about power, and so it's about structures of power. Okay, which is a very sinister term. Whenever you hear that, just always know that bullshit is being spoken, or like systems of power. So if you have that view, your view, there's nothing you can say to that because there's a structure of power that is speaking through you. And what happens in that structure of power is that women are being spoken through by the forces of patriarchy and neoliberalism. And the result is that everything is terrible for us. Then there's the very specific abuses that apparently, we learned in Me Too, which was, I want to be clear. I mean, I've heard some shocking things that are from Me Too, and it was eye-opening. However, there's also a lot of jumping on the, entryism, jumping on the Me Too bandwagon in order to think, oh, great, we've got another way we can, seize power for ourselves by pretending to be victimized. Don't approach us because we'll just shut you down with our, you're going to be a predator or whatever. So it's so draining and depressing and wrong. This idea that to be a woman now, if you're on the left, is to be run down by the system, the medical system. So people who don't give a damn about your endometriosis, your adenomyosis, your infertility issues, your this, your that, your menstruation, your mood fluctuations, your perimenopause, all. I mean, you'd think that to be a woman is literally just to have like lots of issues with your reproductive body. Now, those things are true, and they are bad and they need to be dealt with. There was a serious problem in the history of women's, the whole history actually of the world, women's complaints being dismissed, and that is not okay. And it's led to death, misery, etc. To say that in 2026 Britain, that somehow the whole system is rigged against women's bodies again, that and to be a woman is to just be hormones, it's just to be in pain, it's to have problems, and it's to have to speak about those problems because otherwise we are being overrun roughshod over. I find it very embarrassing, limiting. I think it's a kind of over the top taking of what's private and making very public, but in a way that kind of makes it even worse. I get embarrassed when I see giant ads on the tube for like vaginal dryness. There was one I saw yesterday, like foggy up here, dry down there. Like come and see this menopause, like or perimenopause thing, and it's taking us back to like out of our minds, out of our brains, out of our ability to think, reason, make, create, work, plot. It's all taking us back to our bodies, and that's what part of the reason is that it's a very easy way to cry victimhood if you can do that. Our society, Britain 2026, whatever, the universities, the culture through which young people are going, is you'd have to be a really rare person, very independently minded to be able to understand that you are being asked to pinpoint as many points of victimhood as you possibly can, and to think about whether you need to do all that. And as women, I don't see how young women are now coming through without thinking of themselves primarily as somehow victimized, even when they're really aggressive, confident, and girls at private schools on the lacrosse pitch. They probably still feel victimized. Then you get all the stuff about the very real issues. The thing is, there are real issues here, and I'm very clear in the book. I'm not saying anyone's making stuff up about things that happen with boys and nudes on TikTok, whatever it is they share, sexual shaming, and all the bad things that happen through having smartphones for young people. And all that happens. But by the time a girl leaves and goes into the world, no wonder they all want to just read about how they're being screwed over and like victimized by technology, by the tech bros in Silicon Valley, by the men of our system, by the capitalist system, by the neoliberal system, by the health system. And by the time you've got to the end of this, you're just like, why don't I just like hide under my duvet and never move? And while I'm at it, like I need Freud because I'm now hysterical with all the things that are wrong with me. And how sad is that? At the exact moment when girls can do anything they want, they could be astronauts. There will be millions of schemes available to encourage girls to get into fields that were formerly mocked for wanting to go into. The world is passing us by, and we're just busy complaining about it. And we have such a great world there now. That's the point. And I'm sorry, I'm on my spiel now, but Brendan, I think you'll agree. We're at a juncture. Do we care about do we want to know what the West is? Do we have a West? Does the West exist? And if so, what are its defining features? What are its values? What's good about the West? Is it worth defending? Are we going to defend it? Or are we just like halfway through our suicide, so we'll just keep going with that then? And I think, the women, the reason I'm using it sounds terrible. The reason women and Jews, but women are 50% of the population. But a society that can handle and provide women's freedom that's the West.